to everybody. Good morning for those people who are in the Western Australia and on the west coast of Australia, and good afternoon for those people that are attending from New Zealand, etc. We are proud to be a part of the FME World Fair for 2021, and we will be presenting today over the next hour and a half on some more case studies on how customers are using FME. Before we get started, I thought I'd just play a short video to run through 1Spatial and what we offer, and to also facilitate for stragglers who are a little bit late to our event. Welcome one and all. My name is Andre Makika. I am the country manager for 1Spatial, and I would like to welcome everybody to our third edition of our FME World Fair presentations, where we are presenting to everybody what's new with FME 2021, and in particular, the use cases of how our customers and other customers are using FME in their everyday working life and the benefits of doing so. A little bit of a run through about 1Spatial. We have been around for over 50 years. We've been providing innovation and developing applications and solutions for the geospatial industry in those 50 odd years. We are an organisation that specialises in providing solutions and providing best of breed. We have offices all over the world, with head office being in Cambridge in the UK. We have offices in Ireland, Belgium, France, Tunisia, United States, and in Australia. Within Australia, we have offices in Sydney, being our head office, Melbourne, and an office in Canberra as well. The technologies that we work with a number of partners, and in particular, the partner that we work mostly with is Safe Software. We have been working with Safe Software since about 1999, with many years of working with it, and a little bit more about that later. Our key industries that we work in: government, utilities, transport, mining, engineering, civil engineering, construction, etc. You can see here some of our customers that we work with. Geoscape. We're working with the government departments such as DELP, who we'll be hearing from. We'll be hearing from Tweed Shire Council today, as well as Parks Victoria. As you can see, we have a number of clients and customers. Who are we? We are a software solution provider and a global expert in managing location data and geospatial. We are striving to make the world safer, smarter, and more sustainable for the future. We help our customers to unlock the value of the data to create a smarter world, delivering powerful data solutions and applications on-premise, mobile, and in the cloud. We do this with our customers. We are customer-centric. We try and deliver solutions that address our customers' needs, and we do this by collaborating with our customers and collaborating with people. As you have seen through the video, we have our 1Spatial management suite, which we are happy to talk about at another time. Our time today will be talking primarily on our FME product range that we provide, being desktop, server, cloud, etc. And there will be more information provided on this as we go through today's presentations. I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce the 1Spatial team in Australia. We have Andrew Bashfield, who is our sales manager, Simon Laird, our services lead, Emma Yates, marketing manager, Tom Farrington is a senior consultant, has been with us for many years and is also the manager of our training program. Daniela White works in our sales team, doing sales support, and also helps Tom in coordination of training, and also looks after the annual maintenance program for 1Spatial. We have Michael Studdard, sales consultant. Priyantha Palagama, our senior consultant, and also the manager for our support team. Sam McDonald, senior consultant, and Assis Manandahar, our senior consultant as well. And myself, Andre Mikika, as the country manager. And it is my pleasure to manage this great team of professionals that are part of 1Spatial Australia. And we're here to help. Today's attractions, we're going to hear from Adi Bakatari, the APAC channel manager for Safe Software. We're also going to hear from Cheryl Scott from Tweed Council. We're going to hear from Anthony Drager from DELP, and we're going to hear from Christina Ramos from Parks Victoria. Before I get too far down the lines, I'd just like to take this opportunity to let you know that we do encourage you to ask questions. What we'd encourage you to do is to put into the chat box any questions that you have during the presentations. We will get a copy of those questions, and then I'll be able to then channel them through to the appropriate person to answer them, and we'll endeavour to answer them online. If we don't get to them, we will follow up with a direct answer to you via email. At the end of the sessions, we do encourage you, if you want to ask the questions online. Just put your hand up, and you've got the ability to put your hand up. And if you do, we'll then unmute you, and then you can actually ask the question at the time. At that, I would like to introduce Adi from Safe Software, who has been very kindly helping us out in presenting at all 4 of our events. So he's got 1 more to go, and then he can knock off for the day. So over to you, Adi. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Andre, for the introduction. And I must say it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I thank 1Spatial for allowing me to be a part of their World Fair. And I hope everyone is enjoying the World Fair so far, and hope you're able to see how Safe Software and FME can make your data dreams come true. So we're gonna move into, there we go. So For those that are new to FME, we're just going to do a high-level overview of the FME platform. Of course, FME is at a high level a enterprise data and application integration platform, and we don't require the knowledge of any sort of scripting or coding to use our platform. It's all very it's GUI based and it's drag and drop, and we have the best support for integrating and converting spatial and non-spatial data, which is where our value really comes from. So this is a common scenario that we see when it comes to data challenges within organizations. Departments pick the best applications that they need in order to run their business, and what happens most of the time is, because these applications are separate and that they're not natively integrated into one another, getting information in and out of these systems can sometimes be quite challenging and difficult, and it can even lead to slowing down decision making or requiring a lot more manual labor and processes to be handled in order to get information in and out of these systems. And this is the exact challenge that something like Safe Software and FME addresses. So again, we're an enterprise data and application integration platform. And what we do is we connect all the applications and all the data that is presiding within the organization, whether it's spatial or non-spatial data, and we give the power back to the business users and to decision makers to not just have the integrity of the data, but also have the data converted and translated to the correct formats properly in order to once again help with decision making and automate business processes that were otherwise previously manual. Our mission at Safe Software is very simple. Our mission is, as you see on the screen, to help you maximize the value of your data. It doesn't matter where this data is stored. It does not matter who needs access to the data. It does not matter what type of data source it is. We're very data agnostic in that sense. Our goal is to connect all these applications and data together to ensure that you, as the user of FME, are able to focus on more important areas of business rather than focusing on the integration side with manual codes and scripts, as well as to, again, get the empowerment back for decision making and real-time decision making at that as well. Safe Software has been around for a little bit over 26 years. There we go. Been around for over 26 years. We started back in 1993. And back in 1993, our co-founders, Don and Dale, were working with the government here in British Columbia, and the government had some spatial data challenges, especially when it came to converting CAD to GIS. And they used what would become FME in order to accomplish that. And out of that project is where Safe Software and FME came out of. And today we are very proud to be able to work with over 10,000 organizations worldwide. We're in over 128 different countries that are currently actively using FME. And of course, as a software vendor, our go-to-market strategy is to work with a network of partners in the local area to not just provide local pricing, but as well as local support, local services, as well as customized training to our end clients as well. And we have the pleasure of working very closely with the team at 1Spatial to be an extension of our business in Australia and in other areas that they also have presence. So this is the FME Integration Platform. If you're not familiar with it, our journey always starts off with the far left with FME Desktop. FME Desktop is where you go and build and run your workflows, and this is where you go and build your integrations as well. And again, you might not be able to see it based on the slide, but we're again a no code and an environment where everything is based on a drag and drop GUI based visual interface. Of course, if you want to extend the capabilities of FME Desktop through customization, you're more than welcome to, and you can use many different custom scripts as you require, whether it's Python, R, or C++, but it's not necessary, as FME Desktop out of the box comes with a library of not just readers and writers, but also transformers to help you accomplish your data conversion or migration and translation needs. And once you've built and started running some workflows on FME Desktop and you want to get into the world of automation, that's where FME Server comes into play from an automation perspective. It could be an event-based trigger, or it could be something like triggers a database or an API of some sort. And all your applications are connected using FME Server as well. Now, FME Desktop and FME Server, these are both on-premise solutions, and the deployment of it is quite data agnostic as well. We're very open, and we work with the multiple different cloud platforms that exist in the industry. But for customers that don't want to worry about hosting FME Server on their own infrastructure, and they want a hosted version of FME Server instead, we have our FME Cloud, which is FME Server hosted on Safe Software's AWS infrastructure. And as we continue to get into the world of mobile and accessibility, we're keeping a very close eye on that with our launch of FME Mobile to help you deliver powerful applications. Right now, we're building a lot of applications around FME AR and augmented reality. And while most of the applications are only available on iOS right now, we are certainly looking at Android as well as the next potential platform. So we love showing this slide because it truly talks about the breadth of the different types of data sources that we support. If you look at the bottom of the graph, back in the early 90s, it was a lot of CAD to GIS and GIS to CAD conversions that we were doing. As our customers' needs grew and as our business started to grow, we started to provide a lot more support for other data types and data sources as well. So that's where you see support for things like databases. That's where support for things like BIM came in and big data. We have a wonderful and a very close relationship with Apple on the indoor mapping side. And of course, as I mentioned earlier as well, we're keeping a very close eye on the world of augmented reality and machine learning and AI. And we've definitely built that into FME as well to be able to support those applications that you might be using internally that are leveraging augmented reality or AI with FME. Last year, we were very fortunate to be recognized by Gartner on the Magic Quadrant for enterprise data integration tools. You'll see FME on the top bottom left under the niche category on the top. And we're very proud of this, and this could definitely not be accomplished without our wonderful customers and our partners. And it truly not only talks about the specialization that we have and our focus within spatial data integration, but also the non-spatial side as well. At SAFE, we have the pleasure of working with some of the most incredible technology partners globally. We're partners of Esri, we're partners of Autodesk, we're partners of IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, and very recently we formed a partnership with Snowflake as well, who is a leader when it comes to the cloud data warehouse side, and they're working very closely with us when it comes to the spatial side of Snowflake as well. As I mentioned previously, we're data agnostic, so the operating systems and the deployment options of FME are quite endless, whether it's on Mac, Windows, Linux, Kubernetes, Dockers, or as I mentioned with FME Cloud, if it's a hosted option of FME Server, where Safe Software hosts FME Server on our AWS infrastructure and allows a organization such as 1Spatial to be the managed service provider for your FME Cloud instance and just allow the end customer to just reap the benefits of using FME Server without worrying about the infrastructure or the processing time that might come with it. For customers that already have a cloud environment, either through Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure, and you're looking to deploy FME in your virtual machine, you're more than welcome to directly through the Google Cloud Marketplace and the Microsoft Azure Marketplace. I must mention that these are on a bring your own license model. So if you currently don't have a license or a subscription with FME, please reach out to the team at 1Spatial to coordinate that. But once the licenses are acquired, deploying it on these marketplaces is very easy and very straightforward. And again, it can be hosted on any of these two marketplaces that you might have a pre-existing virtual machine standing. And lastly, we have trials of FME available at safe.com/trial. These are trials of FME Desktop and FME Server. And of course, you can get the FME Platform if you want as well, which is both desktop and server combined. And I encourage you to either visit the website or work closely with 1Spatial in order to acquire that. And if extensions are required for the trial past the expiry, at SAFE, we are always more than happy to consider that. And with that being said, once again, I'd like to thank the 1Spatial team for including me in their presentation, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the session and enjoy the rest of the fair as well. Back to the 1Spatial team.
Thank you, Artie. Excellent. I'd like to take this opportunity to also, we're just trying to get a few things sorted in the background, unfortunately. So what I will do now is take this opportunity to introduce Cheryl Scott, GIS Administrator from Tweed Shire Council. Cheryl will be presenting on the local government subscription and how they are using FME at Tweed Council. Over to you, Cheryl.
Thanks, Andre, and thank you very much to 1Spatial as well for this opportunity for us to be able to present. Just wait for the...
There you go. Have you got control?
Just clicking now to see if it's going to do anything.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, there we go. All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and yeah, thank you again to 1Spatial for this opportunity. So my name is Cheryl Scott, and I am one of the GIS administrators here at Tweed Shire Council. And my role within Council is to manage spatial data for both internal staff as well as data we provide to the public through our mapping tools and also raw data supply. I've worked in GIS for over 15 years in a variety of roles, from local community, local government, and as well as state government. I'm pleased today to be able to share my experiences as an FME user and how we are making the most of FME Desktop as well as FME Server. Also going to be providing an insight into the use of FME at Tweed Shire Council will be one of my colleagues, Lenny Moody. Lenny works as a GIS analyst in the engineering unit of Council, managing all of Council's cadastre data, as well as the water, sewer and stormwater. So we are lucky enough to work in Tweed Shire, which is the largest on the north coast of New South Wales. As a council that manages its own water utilities and delivers services to 94,000 residents, the need to provide staff within the organisation with spatial data and analysis tools is key to business management. There's a heavy reliance on spatial data within the organisation, and we work daily to provide data updates and requests for a variety of business units within council. These include planning and development, water and wastewater, major and minor works, waste management, natural resource management, community and cultural development, rec services, so parks and reserves, our cemeteries, also the aquatic facilities that we manage as council, and much, much more. That's just jumping about a bit, sorry. Sorry, it's just not going to the next slide. We'll just see if it's... There we go. So Tweed Shire Council has had access to FME Desktop for more than 10 years. It's really been in the last 5 years, though, that the key GIS staff have been making the most of the tools in FME Desktop. We've been increasing the use of FME as a tool to read in spatial and non-spatial data from a multitude of, whether it be our property and rating system, our assets management system, as well as the spatial core data within Oracle. And we do this to complete analysis and data manipulation for internal staff, as well as what we have to supply to external customers. As the use of FME within council grew, some challenges presented themselves in accessing FME Desktop. We were limited by the number of desktop licenses we had. A lot of the processes we had set up in workbenches needed to be run on a regular basis, and therefore we were running them manually, and the opportunity for non-GIS staff to access high-end analysis was very limited. As FME has become the go-to tool for our staff, the ability to use FME to run time-consuming data extraction analysis, as well as repetitive data supplies, was growing fast. So how did we address these challenges? Sorry, it's just a little bit slow flicking through my slides. Right, so we did this by the uptake of a local government subscription. The access to licenses was a race to get one every morning when we came into work. We originally started out with 2 floating licenses of FME Desktop, and then we purchased an additional one. So we had 3 licenses that we had to share between 6 core GIS staff, being GIS and surveying staff. This was becoming an issue and reducing the ability for us to be able to perform day-to-day data management tasks. The restricted access we had with the floating licenses was one of the key factors limiting Tweed Shire Council to gain more efficiencies out of using FME. After many years of considering how we can improve this without the need for the merry-go-round process of seeking budget each time we wanted to add an extra license, we took on board the local government subscription. So having the local government subscription now provides us with access to unlimited desktop licenses, which means we've got very happy staff on board. We now provide wider access for all GIS staff and surveying staff, as well as broadening the access of FME Desktop throughout the organisation, in particular to one of our key business units being the water and wastewater unit. Workbenches can now be run by staff to perform analysis without needing access to GIS software, but also extends the functionality of our GIS mapping software. One of the real selling points for Tweed Shire to move to the local government subscription was access to FME Server. The possibilities which we were presented to us by gaining access to the power of FME Server was seen as a real gain for our business processes. Without needing to wait for a license to become available, we can also publish workbenches to FME Server and set up schedules to automate processes, which means no more manual running of workbenches. A project we had successfully been using FME Workbench for was our water and wastewater team to improve how they manage and respond to customer service requests. The customer service project all came about just as the COVID pandemic hit, as we had to minimise the need for staff coming into the office to collect work orders and return them once completed. Moving away from staff printing off customer service requests and providing this to staff was a challenge in itself, let alone working out how to get the requests out to staff as soon as practical from when a service request was reported. We utilised Esri's field solutions and developed in-field functionality for staff and a platform for supervisors to allocate jobs. But how do we get this information to them regularly throughout the day? FME, that's how. But we had to run the workbench manually every 15 minutes in line with the updates that were taking place in our internal database through our property and rating system. We were reliant on FME Workbench being run to retrieve, manipulate and output the data we needed to provide to supervisors and field staff in a timely manner, and then have the information come back into our internal business system. So the drama we had there is what happens if no one is in the office to be able to run it, if you can't get a license or you forget to run it. So one of the first solutions that we put in place once we set up FME Server was automating this key process. We published the workspace to FME Server and set up a schedule to run the workbench every 15 minutes each day. Now we can guarantee that the water and wastewater team are receiving all of the incoming work orders that they allocate to staff, as well as completing jobs coming back into council's business systems. The scheduling of this workbench in FME Server to run the data replication every 15 minutes has resulted in no delays in the requests getting out to the field staff, meaning response times to our customer requests has improved significantly. We've also seen a significant environmental and time savings that have been gained through the use of FME Server. Our admin staff no longer have to print out the hundreds of copies of customer service requests that we get on a weekly basis. Field staff don't have to come into the office to collect paperwork or return their paperwork. And the sign-off rate has increased and time taken to close off the calls has reduced in customer service requests because of the automation through FME Server. The old excuse of the field staff saying that they've lost the paperwork is no longer an issue to be able to close off the work requests. So FME Server has also opened up a whole new world to us and our staff, and the functionality of FME Server Apps has been a big win for our organisation. We are regularly asked to provide staff with analysis tools and outputs of large data sets, including our contours and LiDAR. My fellow GIS analyst at Council, Lenny Moody, is going to run you through a quick video on how explain how we have overcome this challenge with the use of FME Server App.
Hi, Lenny Moody here from Tweed Shire Council. I'm GIS analyst here. We've been using FME for about 10 years. Recently we've developed an app in FME Server to assist our engineering department in rapidly accessing our internal LiDAR data. This point cloud information is in large demand and used in many applications such as environmental planning and engineering design.
So hopefully everyone could hear that little bit of slight softness in the audio there. But as Lenny mentioned, the app's opened up solutions to remove the complexities in accessing these large complex data sets, as well as reducing the time spent by GIS staff responding to analysis and data supply requests. We can, through the use of the server apps, supply the URLs to staff and they can run the analysis when they require it and also where they require it. So even if they're working from home. Lenny mentioned in his overview, the major win with the server app is the amount of time saved using the app to run the extract process and the access of the app to staff, which means staff are more self-sufficient and they're not reliant on us as core GIS staff having to be available to run these processes for them. It also means that GIS staff have more time to develop these innovative solutions using FME. So there's so much more we want to be able to do to set up using FME Desktop and FME Server. A few projects that we have in the pipeline to plan for is to provide analysis support for our recreation services team with assets that they capture out in the field and streamline the data entry into the assets management system, which is currently all done through field apps, but then the process to bring it all back into the system is very manual at the moment. As Lenny mentioned, and I mentioned before, FME Server Apps, we can't wait to set up more apps to be able to extend the data tools to more staff within the organisation. And we're also looking forward to undertaking some server training so we can cover off on items that we might not be aware of, so we can get the optimal use out of the power of FME Server. The benefits Tweed Shire Council has gained in the very short time frame in the last few months that we've had the local government subscription is proving to be invaluable across council. The enhancements we have put in place with the use of FME Server to simplify and streamline tasks and workflows is saving key staff time. For us to be able to maintain data quality and use and integrity and share this data seamlessly with staff in the community by using FME, we'll continue to develop as we learn more about FME and how it can work for us. So we suggest at Tweed Shire, if you haven't yet done it, we encourage you to set up an FME Server app and see the amazing results that we have seen. So that's pretty much it from us at Tweed Shire Council. Again, we'd like to thank 1Spatial for the opportunity to share with you our experience with FME and the benefits that we're having with FME Server. So thank you very much. Back to you, Andre.
Yeah, Thank you, Cherie. That was brilliant. Excellent. Opening up for any questions. So I've got a couple of questions here. You mentioned that through the server, you've now got a situation that non-GIS staff are having access to FME. What has been your experience with the people being able to utilize it and familiarity with FME?
Yeah, okay. So one of the benefits that we're seeing with the FME Server Apps is the nice, so the GUI interface that when you create the server app, they don't need that experience in understanding a GIS system or being able to, like Artie said about scripting and coding. So it's a really nice interface that's presented to them. And we've set up one so the LiDAR, they can just do a polygon representation of where they want to be able to extract the LiDAR, and it provides them in a format that is usable to them. So it's a lot of the engineers or consultants. So they're getting it as an AutoCAD file. And yeah, we've had a lot of really good feedback from, it's really nice to use. The interface of the server apps is really useful. So yeah, it's been really good for that non-GIS orientated people to be able to get that information without having to have a really in-depth understanding of the whole processes, because that's already set up for them.
Okay, thank you. And on that token, you mentioned about consultants. The applications that you've got, are they open to people outside of council, so to the general public, or is something that you're looking to go to?
It's definitely something that we're looking at going to. It is one of the things that we are limited with at the moment. So our FME server is an on-premise, so we have a virtual server environment. We did look at FME Cloud, but again, because our data store is inside the firewall, we weren't able to write to it. So the same situation occurs with our FME server, that it's inside our local government firewall. So at the moment, it is only available to internal staff when we have that network access. But having those tools and the FME server apps set up when we get a data request from a consultant to be able to do it, it just means that we don't have to run those processes manually. We can input the spatial area that they're interested in, run that tool without having to go off into what we would previously do is, go into our mapping software and extract that data. So we would really, really like to be able to get it open up to be able to use outside of our environment and have it so that we can have consultants access it as well.
Thank you. I can't see any more questions, and I'm just seeing if there's anybody that's put their hand up that has a question. I don't see any, so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very much, Cherie, and wish you all the best with your FME endeavours for the future, and we look forward to being of assistance.
No worries. Thanks, Andre.
Our next presenter, Anthony Drager, Manager Enterprise Spatial Services at the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning in Victoria, or more commonly known as DELP. Anthony, I would welcome you, and the presentation will also be with Simon Laird, our services lead from 1Spatial. So I'll invite you to take control and do your presentation, Anthony.
Thanks, Andre, and good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to attend this session. And thanks for 1Spatial for the opportunity as well. So, yeah, like Andre said, Simon will help me with the presentation towards the end with some of the more technical aspects of the presentation. We partnered up with 1Spatial and another consultancy as well to address some of the issues in our data management platform, and that's what today's presentation is all about. So I'll just take myself off camera as well and see if we can go to the next slide. Not sure if there's a bit of a delay. Oh, here we go. Yes, there is. So we skipped over, but here we go. So this is what the presentation's about. It's not easy to describe, load, secure, and publish our spatial data on the existing architecture we have. We created a project to try and address these issues and make things better for our data custodians and our the users of our data as well. So a more broader context is that we were stuck on a legacy merry-go-round in DELP, and something needed to be done to fix the problem. So a few years ago, we wrote a GIS strategy, and from that we developed an implementation plan, and then we got to work to addressing all the issues that were identified in our strategy. A few years later, we had a building fire in our head office, and that took out the network connectivity to the data center, which was in the basement of that building. Even though the data center was operating and all the servers were operating, there was just no connection to the internet, which meant we were offline for 21 days. Which highlighted quite a significant issue, of course, which was that we didn't have the appropriate disaster recovery, and that affected business continuity. And that just seemed to fast track the strategy that we wrote. And it also provided us with an opportunity to introduce new spatial capability into our platforms as we migrated them out of that data center and into the AWS cloud. So basically, in a nutshell, when it came to the spatial data platform, the supply chain was exactly like a roller coaster. As per this picture here, the workflow was just all over the place, and a lot of manual intervention was required. There are a whole lot of other issues as well that we'll sort of highlight as we go through the presentation. But the solution was basically to introduce, obviously, the AWS cloud as our operating platform and hosting environment. We had the legacy architecture was an Oracle-based architecture and a whole lot of different development frameworks, which you'll see in the current state slide in a sec. But we use this opportunity to standardize our technology and address quite a few objectives from our strategy. And FME was a good fit for that, particularly around the configuration of workflows rather than development of workflows. That was a really attractive advantage for us. We also migrated from Oracle databases to PostGIS, and that formed the basis of our data platforms. And then we built the applications on top. And this other symbol on the top right here is the Open Datasoft platform for our search, discovery, and download tool, which we'll touch on at the very end of the presentation. So we had a whole new architecture, and we've built the first stage of that and proven our concept that this architecture will work for us. And as a result, we're able to quite confidently say that we can now describe, load, secure, and publish our data effectively. So we'll get into the more detail slides of this. We'll just wait for the next slide to pop up. There we go. There's the current state. This is just really the top right corner of an A3 diagram. So you can see how complicated this workflow is with all the arrows and different shaped boxes and database symbols. That was just effectively a data workflow that looks like a roller coaster in that it just goes all over the place and eventually finds its way out to these on the far right here, the various replicas of our central repository. So we just wanted to clean that, clean the technical debt, and just make things a lot smoother for everyone. And what that means is a far better user experience for our data loaders and quicker access to data for our data users. So this is where we created a project or commissioned a project with 1Spatial to re-architect that. This is the new future state architecture diagram. What this shows is that the core of the new, what we call a vector data platform, is that highlighted in the green rectangle, and you'll see we've got web interfaces and APIs on the left there. We're using AWS services in terms of API gateway, S3 buckets, and then we move across into the core of FME Server and PostGIS databases for ingestion and staging. It also includes a control database, which is effectively a technical metadata database to store all the incoming technical information of the data supplied and stored. Then a large part of the new vector data platform was a QA process built on FME's rules, and that was critical to ensuring that data is trapped before it goes into production, because what we were finding was data was working its way through to production databases without quality assurance and then breaking production applications. So we definitely had to strengthen that. So then we basically have used the AWS Aurora PostGIS databases for scaling out. So we now have a scalable database platform, which means we don't have to worry about all the replication of data. The Aurora service deals with all of that behind the scenes, but that's all read only. But we did introduce another database for editing. So that's the edit PostGIS database as well. So hopefully you can see that. I've just done a little animation to zoom in to see those various components and built some functionality built around that at the top of this diagram, where you've got the QA and notifications via email. As you load, the FME server will send emails to the data loaders confirming whether the load has passed or failed. One of the big things that our data loaders wanted to introduce as new functionality to this platform was the ability to store and archive each load, so that we have a historical record of what data looked like in the past. That was important from a legal and timescale analysis point of view. So we were able to introduce that. And we're able to introduce a more stringent change management process through this new architecture. We also integrated with our spatial identity management system for authentication and authorization, and it's tightly coupled with our, tightly integrated with our new metadata system, which is built on the open source Geo network. So that's the new architecture, and we'll move on to the next slide now. Now, this new architecture, one of the key objectives was to enable both automated data supplies and also manual data supplies. So FME Server was able to expose loading functions through APIs, and then we built this user interface on top of those APIs. This is our data loading UI. It's a dashboard approach to loading data manually. It is very much metadata driven, so you can't load data unless there's a metadata record in our metadata system. It enables us to load new data or update existing data through buttons on the side. It enables us to understand the status of the load through these dashboard traffic lights, and also a status field. So it'll either tell you that it's in the process of loading, what stage it's at in that load process. It'll warn you with a red symbol if something fails, and then a green symbol if it's successfully loaded. So it's a quick and easy view for the data custodians to understand where the data's at. It also confirms the date that data set was published to production. There's a configuration button which allows us to additional functionality, which we'll go through in a sec. And it also enables us to search for the data set if we've got a long list of loaded data. Okay, so when we load data, the user interface will ask us to confirm the source data set. So you can load it from a local drive or AWS S3 buckets. And we've exposed or supported only a limited number of spatial data formats at the moment, being vector at present, which is Esri's file geodatabases and shapefiles. We've got map info files, and we've also support Excel for our 1Spatial data as well. And then the next step is to confirm which database this data is to be loaded to and the schema that it's loaded to. And now it's limited choice. It's usually either the staging or the production database. We enable that so that someone that's testing data can just load it to staging without going all the way to production effectively. And we also support the scheduling of loads as well, because we do have seasonal data that needs to be loaded 1 minute past midnight on a particular time of year. So that's all working really well, and you've got your traffic lights up the top. As always, a summary of where things are at. Once those fields are populated, the validate button pops up and the data loader can click the validate button, and FME kicks into action and loads the data and analyzes or validates that data before going to the next load screen, which is in two parts. The first part is just reaffirming the standard configuration of where that data's come from and where it's going to go to, and its S3 bucket location and its coordinate system. We also deal with different types of data, which is our change category. So that's a bit of metadata. And then the second part of that screen is the data structure. So we reaffirm the fields and field types of the data that is about to be supplied. The next stage of our project will actually include the ability to index, spatially index and attribute index these fields through some drop downs. And then once that's all confirmed, you hit the submit button, and it again sends another request to FME, and that FME will then load the data into the specified destination database. Now, along the way, it's doing all the QA. It's checking for data structure consistency with what's in production. And if that is different, it will stop and send a message back to the screen and as an email saying that there is a difference and that change management is required, or you need to go back to the start and resupply the data set in the expected format. So what this has done for us is really provide a level of self-service and clarity for data loading, and most importantly for QA and for integrity of our production systems. Okay, so once that's loaded, the data custodian can access the configuration menu, which is this one that you see on your screen now, and you have access to all the previously loaded data through this archive option. You have access to all the QA reports that are generated on load. And you know, when data loads fail, this is where the data loader would go to find out the specifics of why that load has failed. And all of this is being generated through the FME Workbench and reported back to the UI and to the data loader. When we talk about securing and publishing, that steps away from FME Server, but this is where it hooks into the identity management system we have for managing access to our data. And this was critical to making this a consistent workflow and not stepping in and out of different systems and just having one tool to do the lot. It just makes the whole workflow so much more efficient. So I'll quickly show you the secure and publish screen. So with the secure screen, we have three options. You can click on the no access button there and no one would have access to the data. If it's open data, no access constraints required, just click accessible and then it's open to anyone and everyone. Or if we have sensitive data, being the Department of Environment, we do deal with sensitive threatened species and other things. So that data does require us to restrict access. And if we click the restricted button, then you get these menus down here that you can see, which is a list of organizations, groups, and people, all coming out of our identity management system. And then the data loader can select the identities from each of those boxes and add them to the authorized list. And those organizations or people within the organizations, people within the groups or individuals will have access to that sensitive data. Again, nice, easy workflow, easy to understand, easy to use, easy to manage data. The next or the final step in making our data accessible is to specify which of our applications are able to access that data. So this is again coming out of our IDAM. It's all of our known applications in a list. Select the ones that you want to expose the data through and you add it to that authorized apps list. An example here is our data share. So what that means is that the data loading process is now complete and the data is published to these applications. And our data share application is our primary application for search, discovery, and download of our data. Some of you may be familiar with Spatial Data Mart. That is now being decommissioned and modernized and moved into the AWS cloud like a lot of our other enterprise spatial applications. This is a snapshot of the actual ordering component of data share. This page here is the bit after you've searched and discovered and highlighted the data set of interest. So in this example here, we're using our VicMap transport data set. And we partnered with, this is outside of the vector data platform rebuild that I've just shown you. We partnered up with Open Datasoft software that is licensed by a company called Peclet out of Sydney. And we rebuilt the Spatial Data Mart front end on their technology. And this is an example of one of those pages on that data share site. And what we do is we use Open Data Soft for search discovery and the web pages for that. We form an order out of these web pages. For example, you can see here that you can customize your order by selecting a projection that you want that data to be exported out as. So there's a list of projections that we support. You can put a buffer on your data or not in 1 kilometer increments, I think it is. And you can also specify your export format, and these are the formats we support. And once you've configured that order, you proceed to My Cart, just like any kind of e-commerce workflow. Oh, sorry, I should say you can also select a cookie or an area of interest to download a subset of a statewide data set. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 configuration items. Once you hit proceed to cart and proceed to order, the Open Data Soft front end will send that order to the FME backend to process that order and then send a link to the user. And that link is a link to the exported data set. So here's an example of how we're using FME. We've implemented an FME data platform, and we're using it to both load the data, QA the data, and also for exporting of that data. So here, this is where I'll hand over to Simon to get under the hood and explain a little bit more about the workflows and architecture of what we've implemented. Over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Anthony. So what we've got here is a bit of a similar diagram to what Anthony showed earlier, sort of giving you an indication of how the components of the system fit together. As you can see, FME sits front and center of underpinning the platform, which we have deployed on AWS. And as you can see there from the smaller symbols at the bottom, if you can read that, we're also making use of a range of other AWS services to underpin and power the system. So as Anthony showed you through the UI screenshots there, data custodians in this diagram on the left have a variety of options to make use of the platform and load their data. One of those, which is the web interface, which you've seen some screenshots of. The other option that custodians have is through automating their loads via a series of APIs. And what this means is that if data custodians have their data hosted and maintained in one system, they could automate the process either using FME or Python or any other scripting language to take a snapshot of their data that is currently changing and up to date, and then load it into this platform and publish it out for others to use. So as Anthony's explained, once data is loaded into the platform, it goes through a process to understand and compare what's been loaded with the previously supplied data. Any changes, like have been mentioned, to the data schema are flagged either for a loader to say, yep, this is an intended change. We actually need to change the data schema because there is new fields, for example, or something else has changed. And depending on who is making that change, whether it is for perhaps a data set that's highly used, a change management process will come into play there to determine whether the loader or whether an admin actually is the one that can then say, we approve this, let's push it through to the production database. Getting further into the FME side of things, there's 4 primary workbenches that underpin the system. Once data is loaded in to one of the S3 buckets, we have a workbench which we refer to as a microservice, which actually grabs that data out of S3, does a quick validation of the schema, and has a look at what's been provided and then compares it to what's been previously supplied. So based on that, we can then determine whether it matches or whether there's a difference. After that, there's a separate process which does the ingestion, the QA process, which is fundamentally the real key purpose of this system, and then loading it through to the staging database. And this workbench really leverages the attribute and geometry validation tools that exist within FME. There's a separate workspace which does our archival of data just before new data is loaded. So what it does, it takes a snapshot out of the Aurora production database, zips it up and puts it into a particular bucket. And then finally, a publishing workspace, which it makes use of, I guess, a few smarts in the process to try and minimize the need to replace data or update data in that production database that actually hasn't changed. So it does some change detection in there to try and really only update and touch the records that have had change occur to them, so that we're not making unnecessary change or moving data around unnecessarily and then affecting that publication database. So in addition, there's several other workbenches that perform key tasks to keep the platform consistent and up and running. And as you can see there, and as Anthony's mentioned, FME integrates into the metadata system and also into the overarching spatial identity and access management system. So really, at the end of the day, the flexibility and the number of off-the-shelf integrations that FME provides are really on show with this project, because while FME is a core part of it, there's many other AWS services and also systems here like GeoNetwork and Spatial IDAM, which we're integrating with, which FME gives us connectors and other ways that we can easily integrate with them without having to suddenly start writing custom connectors or custom code to integrate to these. So with that, I'll hand back to you, Anthony. And you're on mute still, Anthony.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, I think it was a really good point you made there about how highly flexible FME is when it comes to integration, and not only flexible but easily flexible. So yeah, that really was on show with this project. So we'll go to the next slide. Here we go. So the results of all of this is that, you know, we hit some of our key objectives in delivering this project, which was a usable solution. So we've got standard loading procedure now, metadata driven. So you can't load a data set into a database until it's actually described in the metadata system, because we did have instances of data being live and in production, but no metadata. So we've got quality assurances now guaranteed. There's a high level of self-service for our data managers and loaders. You know, the current architecture is a lot of intervention by my team to pull a lever or flick a switch or whatever to get the data to be published. So that's all eliminated. There's a level of transparency and record keeping through the QA reports. And you know, like I said before, now that we have an archive of our data, we can always go back in time and see when the data was loaded, but also what it looked like, its structure. We've had instances in the past through the big fires that we've had in the past where we have been in legal proceedings that have required us to present data at a point in time, and it can be a year or 2 years after the fact. So we've never been able to do that, not easily anyway, but now we can through this simple workflow and UI. So it's big ticks for us. The other big ticket item. It was, I think it's maintainability is the next one. If it pops up. Here we go, maintainability. So by standardizing our architecture with, primarily FME at the core of everything, but then, we've got PostGIS as a database rather than Oracle. We've got AWS services, and we've introduced other bits and pieces that means we don't have to carry all these different development frameworks and technical debt, which is very hard to maintain and upgrade and fix. And I think the fact that FME is configurable code rather than developing code was a really very attractive for us and a good fit for our strategy. I don't think what we've implemented in terms of FME servers is scalable, but we'll move towards that in time. We can't have everything on day one, but other parts of our data platform architecture are scalable. Aurora PostGIS is an example of that. And that's one of the benefits of cloud, I think, as opposed to on-prem data centers. I think most importantly, this solution and working with 1Spatial, we've basically current state risks and issues have been addressed, which is what we wanted to achieve. And we've been able to achieve that with 1Spatial's help. So that's fantastic. Now, future plans. So effectively this project, we had significant time constraints. So we knew from day one that we'd have to build in 2 phases. So that what I've shown you is phase 1. We've now defined phase 2, and that is to improve the usability of that user interface further, to introduce the support of spatial and attribute indexing, and to support the loading or creation and deletion of data views, which is quite common in the VicMap product suite. We worked with Geoplex as well, so there's another contractor that was involved in this project to build those APIs, which FME then goes and calls. Those APIs are doing the creation and deletion of indexing and views. And then we will, once that's done, we'll deploy to production and we'll replace the legacy, and that's on the critical path of getting out of our data center, which is on the critical path of providing business continuity or guaranteeing business continuity to our department and our stakeholders. And then the final step will be to extend that UI to support our raster data. So we have a separate raster data platform. It's in AWS, and it is primarily built on the S3 bucket technology with a whole lot of APIs around it. And obviously we would also extend that data share front end to support the search, discovery, download of raster data, and FME will be critical to that order processing as well. I believe that's already built and supported, but we just haven't had time to test and deploy to production. So that's not too far away. So the call to action is really just unlock the power of FME. I've been blown away with what this product can do. Before this project, I knew very little of it. Obviously, being in the industry for so long, I knew what FME is. I probably didn't understand its power. And I noticed there that in the first presentation, there was an FME mobile, which I've made a note of and would like to explore that further. So my point here is I think I'm learning a lot at the moment about FME and its capability, and loving it. And the conclusion here is that FME has solved many of our data loading and delivery challenges for all the reasons I've explained before, which is removing technical debt, standardizing our technology, supporting automation via APIs, and FME has enabled us to support new formats like Esri file geodatabases. And finally, provide our data custodians with a level of self-service they haven't had before, which just creates efficiencies. And I think will attract usage as well. So that's important for us. I think that's it. Thank you. Thanks for listening. And thanks to Simon for helping me out. And thanks for Andre for the opportunity as well to present at the World Fair. Thank you. Back to you, Andre.
Thank you, Anthony. And thank you, Simon, for your assistance in presenting on that. And I'm conscious of time. I have got a question here. You mentioned about the fact that you believe that there was savings in time and money between doing it the old traditional way of writing code as compared to using FME. Have you got any thoughts on how much it saved you, percentage-wise, or anything?
Oh, that's a good question. I've never really analysed that to the point where I put it in a business case or anything like that. But I could hazard a guess in terms of staff costs and some licensing costs, and I would say it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Probably below $500,000, but more than 200,000. So let's
Excellent.
say $250,000, Andre. How's that?
$250,000. Yep, no, that sounds like a very good ballpark figure. Thank you very much. Okay, no I'll move on. If you do have any questions, please put them into the chat, and we'll organise to answer them later. I'll now like to take this opportunity to welcome Christina Ramos, the Manager of Spatial Information Services, Information Technology Services at Parks Victoria. Welcome, Chris, and I'll hand it over to you I'll give you, where are we? There we go. You should now have control of the keyboard. Welcome, Chris.
Okay, let me see. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. I seem to be unable to turn on my camera, so I'll have to apologize for that. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning, I suppose, for our colleagues in Western Australia. My name is Chris Ramos. Presentation has gone backwards.
No,
Okay.
It's my fault. I'm trying to see if I can get your video on.
All right. Well, so I'll just keep going. Yeah, my name is Chris Ramos. I'm Manager of Spatial Information Services at Parks Victoria. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the various lands from which we meet today, even though we meet virtually, but I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So I work for Parks Victoria, which is a land management authority responsible for the management of all of our national and state parks in Victoria, which is about 4 million hectares, about 20% of the state. So here I am. Hello, everybody. So the work that I'm going to present today, and thank you so much, 1Spatial, for inviting us to talk about a little bit of the FME work we do at Parks Victoria. I was listening to our colleagues at Tweed, Shire Council before and reflecting on how similar our FME journey has been. We have been using FME for about 10 years as well in Parks Victoria, and we also started with the desktop licenses, and quickly we evolved towards FME Server, and we have been heavily using FME Desktop and particularly Server for a number of years now. I'm going to present today about a piece of work that we developed during the Black Summer bushfires last year, which was an event of a magnitude we never experienced before. But this piece of work, I think, in some way encapsulates some of the challenges that we face, and also how flexible and how powerful FME is in assisting us finding quick solutions that deliver real business value, real business benefits. So the focus today is about some critical spatial analytics work that we developed in my team. We developed to support Parks Victoria understanding the impact of the unfolding bushfire event onto our parks operations and the potential damage to our fixed assets. So let's see if we can progress now. I'm not sure if it's progressing. Okay, cool. So I'll give you a little bit of background. There seems to be a little bit of a delay. Yeah, okay. So as I said before, the scale of the bushfire event was really unprecedented for us. And it challenged our information systems to provide a quick information to the business, to understand the context of the unfolding situation, what the impact was, so that we could plan, I mean Parks Victoria, we could plan on a daily basis how to respond, which parks to close, you know, what's potential damage to date, and questions like that. So let me move on. So one of the challenges that we had is that our existing information systems at Parks Victoria, they are not designed to answer those questions. So the event was truly unprecedented. When we operate to respond to an emergency, we normally operate with other agencies, and the information systems that are utilized in that context are external to us. So our information systems, they are designed for other purposes that are not necessarily adaptable to take on a very dynamic and unfolding situation. So we mainly, under emergency management situation, we utilize the open and emergency management Victoria systems. And those systems are designed to assist the response to the emergency, not to support park operations. So here we are with a little bit of a situation in which the systems that we use are designed for one purpose, the emergency response. The systems that we use for park operations did not talk to emergency response. So parks operations were in a sort of a limbo at the time. And the context of having timely, up-to-date situational awareness was critical for us operating Parks Victoria to make some critical decisions, okay? And to put this all into context, the events had a particularly bad turn around that week between Christmas and New Year's 2019. So leading towards New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, the scale of the event just took a bad turn. And I just don't want to give too much of an update on my holiday plans, but back then I was on holidays. I was on a short trip with my son to Sydney, and then following the events unfolding, talking to colleagues over the phone, it was quite obvious what was happening. And I was getting lots of phone calls from Parks Victoria colleagues, not knowing that I was on leave, asking me questions. And then from Manly Beach, I was coordinating my colleagues who had returned to work in the office to design a solution, which is what I'm going to explore today. So I'm telling you this just so that you understand that the context was very challenging, and the flexibility that FME allowed was fundamental in enabling us to come up with and design and implement a solution within a matter of days that was really critical for Parks Victoria. So it was quite obvious. We need a live data feed here in Parks Victoria. We don't have one, we need one. And we need to know on a regular interval, we need to know what the fire footprint is. Where's the fire right now? We didn't have that information available at the time. And critically, the DELP and Emergency Management Victoria systems had not been designed to provide that either. So they obviously had access to that information, but that information was available just within their servers, within their systems. Okay, so and I have to acknowledge the professionalism of our colleagues at those two agencies, because despite the magnitude of the events, they made the time to actually work with us and to open the door to allow us to connect to their environments. So initially we did that connection with our colleagues at Emergency Management Victoria, and then subsequently with our DELP colleagues. So using FME, we connected to initially Emergency Management Victoria consuming data from a GeoJSON connection file. And that file encapsulated a number of different layers, but critically, the information that we needed was there, which is the current burn, the fire footprint, but also the emergency warning areas, because that was another critical question that was coming. So emergency warnings are being issued across the state for different areas with evacuation orders and things like that. But what parks are under those orders? What parks do we have to close? You know, what parks are affected? So critically, we needed access to that information as well. So then, and I'm not going to go under the bonnet here. Happy to take on questions and come back to you later. I'm going to focus on a business challenge and how we use FME to come up with a quick solution. Okay, so basically we use FME. We designed an initial FME workbench that would connect to EMV through that GeoJSON file and would pull that information. We had to do a little bit of a cleanup of the different layers that were contained within it, but then we published those as feature services to our ArcGIS Online tenancy, Parks Victoria's ArcGIS Online tenancy. And then working in partnership with our emergency management colleagues, we critically made all of those feature services available publicly, because not only we were bombarding them with questions about we need this data, but several other agencies were doing the same, and they were stretched for resources. So in a certain way, we worked in partnership there. They make the data available to us, we made the data available to the world, using FME, of course. And then that feature service that we published, then we connected to our internal business systems. And we designed that workbench in order to do that data pooling and publishing every 15 minutes. So those requests were being sent to EMV and then DELP every 15 minutes, and we were updating the layers in our ArcGIS Online. Then we brought that data back onto our park systems, and then critically our colleagues could then perform their own spatial analysis, their own intersections, and being able to quickly know, okay, this is the latest situation, these are the parks affected, this is the advice that is being issued by the Emergency Management Commissioner on these particular areas. Okay. In addition to that, we also created some ArcGIS Desktop layer files where we configure the layer files to connect to that service, and then put some symbology on it. And then we made that layer file available internally. So anyone with ArcGIS Desktop, didn't need to go searching around, how do we establish the connection? Just load the layer file and off you go. And we also share that layer file with any colleagues from other agencies who needed the same information. So, so that was part of the work that we've done. So that was the initial information product that we provided, but then other questions start being asked. Okay, so and historically, I knew that when Parks Victoria is to submit any insurance claims around our asset damage, there's some critical information that we need to have in order to prepare those claims. So we need to know when the asset is likely to have been damaged. So understanding when that current burn intersected an asset was critical. Okay, and then the way those policies work, we claim for events, and an event is a 7-day window. So in order to be able to lodge a claim with our insurers, we need to know on a daily basis what the estimated damage was. So that we can look over time. There is obviously an excess that we have to pay. I'm not sure what excess is that, but there is an excess. And then the trick of that situation is we need to understand, look at different possible windows that we could claim, and then make a call as to which ones are the obvious claims to lodge to minimize the amount of excess that we are going to pay. Okay, so throughout an event that spans over a number of days, let's suppose the first 3 days the damage is not very significant, so it doesn't make sense to claim those days, because it's better for us to start claiming from day 4 and then claim the 7 subsequent days, rather than doing 2 claims and paying more excess for the amount of return that you have may not be worthwhile. So capturing that daily snapshot was critical, because it would allow us to understand what was the damage over time. So, so what we've done, we wrote, so through that process, going to EMV and DELP every 15 minutes, pulling the data, we basically started writing every day at 6 a.m. the fire footprint to a file geodatabase, so that we can then look at the evolution of the event on a daily basis. Okay, but we also, with FME, we started running and everything that I'm telling you may give an impression that it was over a number of days. It was not. I'm talking like 3 days here, okay? So there was a lot going on over that period of time, a lot of conversations, a lot of analysis. So it was a very interesting week, that's for sure. So we would go and then get that footprint right to a file geodatabase every day at 6 a.m. But in doing so, we would also intersect that fire footprint against our asset database. And then whenever an asset intersects the fire footprint, then we would write to a feature in a file geodatabase, but we also started populating an Excel spreadsheet as an additional information product, okay? So that Excel spreadsheet, or the logic behind, would be footprint intersect with asset. If it intersect, then we write to the feature class and the Excel spreadsheet with all the details of the asset and the stamp, the date stamp of when it intersect the burn, okay? But next day, the footprint, because it got larger, it will intersect the same asset again. So we don't want to be writing the same asset multiple times, because then it would overestimate the damage. So first we would interrogate, has this particular asset been already intersected before? So is that asset already in the table? If it is, then ignore. And then in that way, we could incrementally populate the feature class and the table, and avoid having those figures of damage blown out. So moving on. So then now I have 2 other products in addition to what I described to you before. So I have a file geodatabase and I have an Excel spreadsheet, but then we went a step further and we published that asset data as operation dashboards, and also the intersect of the footprint of the burn against park area. We published as operation dashboard. So the whole idea was to make that information easily available to the decision makers, to whoever needed to know across our business, and make it interactive so that our colleagues could zoom in, interrogate, zoom out, you know, do that sort of BI-ish experience that you get out of an ArcGIS operation dashboard. So the result, and I'll talk a little bit more in the end, but as a result of that, the business was quite blown away, I have to say, because not only the information was right there available, I got directors asking me, can you produce a map of this? Can you produce a map of that? And I would just send a link to the operation dashboard. And then they just had to, they had to present to the CEO or to colleagues. They could just grab a screenshot and it was ready for them to go. So there was greater efficiencies at that level as well as operational level. So the work was much appreciated. But also the work that we produced enabled Parks Victoria to move into recovery mode much faster than ever before, despite the fact that the damage, the magnitude of the event was unprecedented, okay? So because our colleagues who deal with insurance claims, they could every day in the morning go back, look in the system, what was the damage in the last 24 hours? What about the last week? What about the last fortnight? So they could start simulating not only on the operation dashboard, but also on an Excel spreadsheet. They could run pivot tables. So it was much appreciated. And I have to say, after all the event finished, obviously the damage had to be verified in the field. And it turned out that our estimates were really accurate, were really close to the actual damage that was verified in the field. But after all these events, I have been actually called to join a meeting with our colleagues that deal with insurance and our insurer. And our insurer was asking questions about how we put this together, because their words were, this was the best information that a client ever provided to us. Because in the process of producing all of these, I also granted the insurers access to our information dashboard as it was published in ArcGIS Online. So it was a very interesting experience of the professionalism of our colleagues in DELP and Emergency Management Victoria, my own team coming together as one under very challenging circumstances, with me harassing them from Manly Beach and the Powerhouse Museum, and coming together and designing a solution in a very quick time, turnaround, and a solution that delivered real value to Parks Victoria and enabled us to move into recovery much faster than ever before, which is for some communities, some remote communities that were affected by the catastrophic events of the Black Summer bushfire, that's a lifeline. Like several communities in Eastern Gippsland in Victoria, they actually live on tourism, and the tourism attractions are our parks. So the sooner we get the parks back up and running, the easier or the better off they will be in terms of economic recovery. Okay, but I think I'm talking too much. So I would like to just show you what the operation dashboard looks like. So we have others, but I'll just show these three, which relates to the 1920 bushfire. So we published 3 operation dashboards. So the one on the left is focused on areas affected, and then the 2 on the right are more related to damage to assets. So this one is about the damage to area. So very simple, which parks have burned, how much has burned. That was what this product was designed to answer, okay? And I'm sure most of you would have had experience to work with operation dashboards. So what I showed you, just flicking from one slide to the other, is that on the left panel, those three boxes there, it's focused around the figures across the entire state. And then to the right, then you can drill down, clicking on a particular region, and then all the figures get recalculated for the damage on that particular region. So in our case, for that fire season, the most affected region was Eastern region. So as you can see, as Parks Victoria, we had about 11% of our area potentially burned. But for Eastern Victoria, because they were more affected. So about 30% of what they manage actually was actually affected by the events. And then on the top of that, we also overlaid a thematic map. So we calculated the damage in area and then in percentage of the park. And then we put a legend on it, being the red, parks in red are obviously the highest level of damage. So as you can see, a user can go and click on a park, and then a pop-up comes with the fields that are part of our parks table, but also the fields that have been calculated by FME, which is the area that was affected, the percentage of the park that was affected. You know, we put some categories there, and also the date stamp when the last damage was recorded in the table. Yeah, and that's just me enlarging so you can see better. And then another operation dashboard that I want to show you is the one about impact to assets. Okay, so you will see that some of the categories here, well, we filtered them out. So we worked in partnership with some colleagues who look after those insurance claims, and they were particularly interested in some types of assets for their analysis. Okay, when we run the FME, we run over everything. When we wrote the results of that FME analysis to feature class and to Excel, we wrote everything. But in order to publish here, we filtered some categories out. Okay, and then those boxes across the bottom, they are aggregating figures, again, according to some questions that our colleagues had at the time. Okay, this particular one, they were particularly interested in calculating damage to bridges. That was an area of focus. So what I want to show here, so moving from the other slide to this slide here, is on the top right corner here, you can see that we can put a date range in the way we filter the data. So not only you can do that spatial filter, but also you can put a date range. So I want to see the damage to this particular area. In this case, it's Snowy Crow-Jingalong, which is the far east corner of Victoria. Snowy Crow-Jingalong is a park area. It's a management area that we have internally. But I want to see the damage to Snowy Crow-Jingalong between this date and that date. So 29th of December 2019 to 4th of January 2020. So that's the date range that I'm interrogating there. And then you can see that it recalculates the damage in some of the boxes to reflect the damage on that particular area over that window of time. And then this same area that I'm interrogating, but now I'm interrogating over a different period of time. So now I'm looking 22nd of December 2019 to 28th of December 2019, so that you can see it recalculates, it looks at different date ranges and presents the product, updates the product accordingly. Okay, obviously, as said before, all the information is also presented in the Excel spreadsheet, because we cannot overlook Excel as a product that the business uses heavily. And that Excel spreadsheet, one of my colleagues told me that it was the most beautiful Excel spreadsheet he has ever seen in his life. And that's it. I hope I didn't take too much of your time, but I just would like to acknowledge the exceptional quality and professionalism of my colleagues in my team at Parks Victoria who worked with me on this product or this suite of products. So I had Emma, Azade, and Joji. So Azade, who now works for Delp, and Ahad, they have been behind all the FME work that I presented today. And then Joji and Emma, they designed the operation dashboards that I presented to you today. So yeah, kudos to them, excellent work, delivered real benefit to our business. And that's it. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Christina. It was a very excellent presentation and very informative. We have run over time, but I don't believe anyone will have, based on the figures, no one has dropped off. It's been a thoroughly entertaining and educational presentation. Thank you, Christina. I do have a couple of questions here that have come through, and I'll just ask them. Do you believe that you could have implemented the solution that you've done using the old traditional way of coding in that time period? Do you believe that FME was the reason why you were able to do it, to put that application together quickly?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. We may have been able to, we would have been able to produce something similar, but not that quickly. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. The other question I had was the system that you've developed, and you mentioned that the insurance companies, I'm assuming that you're talking about your insurance company that you're dealing with, or is it
Yes.
now able to be utilized by the insurance companies in general for their work, or is it not open to them at this stage?
Well, that's an interesting question. We have developed that product last fire season. This fire season, it wasn't required. Of course, if it was required, we stop the process. So basically the process was designed to pull data every day, recalculate and publish. So after the end of the season, we just stopped that workbench. So it stopped running. I suppose we would have to reach back to our colleagues at Delp and EMV just to make sure that the door is still open for us to pull the data. So that would be a little bit of a consultation there. Apart from that, I don't see any difficulty in just pressing the play button again and get it running again. We would have to reconfigure the operation dashboards, that's for sure. But I guess the foundation work is already there. And I'm happy to keep the conversation going if anybody is interested in the work that we've done and see benefiting in adopting a similar process in their organization. You have my contact details there.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'll wrap up our presentation. I'll just take this opportunity to highlight the services that 1Spatial has and offers. We have been providing FME training since 2014 within Australia. We have accredited FME professionals for desktop, certified professionals for server, and we have an accredited training program with our accredited trainers in our staff. We are the premier FME Platinum partner for FME in Australia, with a dedicated support team providing support for desktop, server, and FME cloud. And 1Spatial is one of 3 MSPs in the world where we are able to provide support for FME Cloud officially through the SAFE network. The services that we provide, we facilitate product evaluation to help customers assess the feasibility and suitability of the products that are available. We do provide FME consultancy services for people that you may well have staff on board that are able to do the work for you, but you may not have the bandwidth. So we can provide consultancy services, as you've heard through the presentations today, to assist you in producing the results that you need. We do public and bespoke training, and I'll talk a bit more about that as we go through. And our technical support, as I mentioned, is available through support@1spatial.com, or you can call our 1300 290 686 number to get access to our support team. As I mentioned, we do provide FME desktop training for basic, advanced, and FME server authoring. We do this by face-to-face at our 1Spatial training facilities. To get an idea of what we have on offer, I'd welcome you to go to our website and look at our training, and there's a complete timetable of when we are hosting training, and you're more than welcome to register for your interest. We can also do formal and custom training at our training facility to your needs, as well as being able to do them on premise at your location. If you want to know more, please contact us at sales.australia@1spatial.com, or again, call us on our 1300 290 686 number. Places that we are going to be over the next 12 months. We will be running a hot features from the FME World Fair in June, so that once everything's settled, we will then do a refresher and bring to you in a short webinar the key features that we believe you should be knowing about. Last year, we ran a GDA 2020 webinar to talk about what you needed to think about if you are migrating to 2020. And in July, we'll be running a follow-up where we'll talk about the next step and talk about how some organizations have already done it and what can be done. We have been running a very successful program of what we call speed dating with Don Murray, the co-founder and president of Safe Software. And he makes himself available whereby we do a webinar with him, and you can ask any question naturally relating to FME of him. If you are interested, please get in contact with us. The numbers or people that can attend this is limited, so you need to get in quick if you're interested. Last year, we also ran an FME Server webinar, and from that webinar, we discovered that there was a lot of information that is available and of interest to customers. So what we'll be running is a month in August, where every week we will have a session on FME Server. 1Spatial products, 1 Data Gateway, 1 Integrate, PAI, Positional Accuracy Interface, improvement, etc. We will be running webinars on those in October and November. And again, looking to do a speed dating in November with Don. We are also going out to live events. In September, we'll be running a breakfast series where we'll be visiting each major capital city and having a breakfast where we'll be running through all the products that we have to offer, etc. We'll also be at the South Australian Spatial Information Day Conference in September, a regional conference in New South Wales ACT in October, Sydney Build in Sydney in November, and attending the Victorian Surveying Spatial Summit Day in November in Victoria. It's the end of financial year. We are running a special where there's for 5 reasons that you should contact us. One of them, to get the latest FME 2021 and receive 12 months free maintenance and support. If you have old licenses of FME, take the opportunity before the end of financial year to upgrade and receive the latest 2021, latest version of 2020 and upgrades for the next 12 months to take advantage of the faster transformers, increased automation control, and new formats that are available in the system. If you are interested in engaging 1Spatial for some consultancy work, if you do get in contact with us before the end of financial year, we are happy to provide a 10% discount on that, but you need to get in quick to avoid disappointment. As you know, the financial year is coming to an end very quickly. If you purchase any of the 1Spatial products, 1 Data Gateway, 1 Integrate, etc., you can receive a 15% off the recommended retail price. And in addition, with regard to our FME training, we are offering a 10% discount off the list price, and you can purchase it and have it available to you to use within the next 12 months. So you can purchase before the end of financial year, but not utilize it until September, October, November, or early into the following year. All of these are available till the end of June, so hurry to maximize your savings. Tomorrow, we'll also be running a session, and it is not too late for people to register for tomorrow's sessions, where we will be your dreams come true with 1Spatial. We'll be hearing from Jonathan Stanger from Spatial Partners, talking about magic tricks for taming wild external systems. We'll also be hearing from Barrett Higman from Hancock Plantations, Victoria, and there will be a Q&A session from Safe Software and the 1Spatial technical team. On that note, I'd like to thank everybody. Apologise for the late close of this session, but I do believe that everyone will have enjoyed what has been presented. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Cherie from Tweed Shire Council for her presentation, along with Todd. I'd like to thank Anthony Drager for his presentation from DELP, and Chris and the team from Parks Victoria for your wonderful presentation as well. On that note, thank you all. Good afternoon, and we look forward to catching up with you next time. Bye-bye.